Why? You were very supportive. You're very supportive. All right. So we are up to, as I say, the last bit just before the Mishnah. Mem base Amadar of Tonu Rabbanon. It's about 10 lines, I think, before the Mishnah. Mem base Amadar, yeah. Yeah. Mem base Amadar, correct. Mem base Amadar, yeah. What was that? No, you don't think so, Martin? We did it quite quickly, but we did the last bit. We did the last bit.
The two dots and then other phone bit. But maybe not still.
No, we did. We definitely did that. We definitely did that. We talked about the difference with someone selling land in public. He wants it to be known. Basically, the difference between you want to publicize something. If you borrow money, you borrow money secretly, right? Because people shouldn't know that you're under pressure. Remember that? Anyone remember that? Well, yeah. Whereas when it comes to selling land, then on the contrary, it's public, and therefore the point we tried to make was that, I mean, it's true that it's important that we just understand it, because we'll need it a little bit for the next, although it's a different rice, that we'll need a little bit for the next Gemora as well. Basically like this, Rav makes a statement. Rav says that you can have three buyers, so Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, they each buy from each other, and that can create a chazaka. They can join together to create a chazaka. That's shlosh lokochos mitzdarfin. Rav adds that's only when there's a shtar. The implication being that if there's a shtar, everyone knows about it. And because everyone knows about it, the guy who sold the ma'arer, the one who's coming along and saying, "Hey, it's my land. You haven't got chazaka, whatever. How can you call it? It's my land?" So, because he knew they were passing it one to the other, they were selling it one to the other. It was public knowledge. He can't say, "Hey, you weren't acting like normal people because you just passed it hand to hand. You were afraid to be machzik like normal people the whole 3 years. That's why you sold it one to the other." You can't do that if there's a shtar, because with a shtar, it's public knowledge. Everyone knows what you're doing, and we're not scared. We're not hiding, right? The implication being that with Adim, that's not good enough. The Adim is not public knowledge, it's not public knowledge. And that's what we had a question on. If there was only Adim and no shtar, and that was what the Gemora found problematic, because well, the first thing we brought was Rav says that you can claim from the chosim Mishor Bodim. That means to say, if a person sells a field with Adim, he has recourse to encumbered property. That means property which has subsequently been sold to someone else. He can go and claim it from him. If something happens to the land, he loses the land, right? And the reason is because the buyer beware. The subsequent buyers should have done their homework. In other words, the Gemora makes a distinction between someone who buys property, who is expected to do investigative work. You remember now? Investigative work. And look into whether or not something has happened that might subsequently jeopardize his sale. You're expected to do that. Remember we said, like, you like the land registry checks, right? That's why you do this stuff, because it's a weird thing to go ahead and buy property without doing background checks. It's a normal thing to do.
That's similar to the case in the two sons inherited, one inherited the money, one inherited the property. The risk of one.
The risk is on.
The risk of theft was on the one who got the money, and the risk of having the property be possessed was on the one.
Right. In other words, why do they have? In other words, when they have to support each other and everything else. Yeah, it's all. I think it's all related in the sense that if you buy property, and that was right. That's the whole discussion as to whether they all need to chip in or not, right? Where you buy property, there's an expectation that you have a responsibility, and there may be someone else who might come along knocking on your door and saying, "Look, hey, I bought it before," so it's, I've got first rights, I've got first charge on the property, right? But that is very different to the case of a person who is making a claim and saying, "You are squatting in my land." The onus is not on him to do like an investigative work. On the contrary, he's claiming to be the owner. So in other words, the only argument is that if there's something you should have known about, Yeah, all right. If there's something you should have known about, right? Then ultimately you should you can't say you can't have any claims, right? You can't have any claims against. In other words, that's only if it's public knowledge. If it's public knowledge, we say to you, hey, you should have made an objection. Public knowledge is with a star and not with Adam. But then the Gemora asks and says that it's not so. Just still recapping everything we did. Then that Rav himself doesn't say that. The Mishnah says, well, first we ask it from a Mishnah. The Mishnah implies that if you lend someone with a shtar, you can claim from encumbered property, but through Adim, you claim from unencumbered property. There's just witnesses. Just Adim, you came from yes, you can only claim from Nechosim b'nei Chorin. Okay, and therefore we see that it's not the same. If you here it says if you lend someone money, okay, just with Adim, and then you want to get your money back, okay? Where'd you get your money back from? If it was only Adim, then you can't get your money back from property that was sold to someone else, okay? And the reason is, and the one first says, well, that doesn't matter because Rav can argue with the Mishnah. Then we say, no, but Rav himself said that. Malva Peh, you can't claim from Yoshim, you can't claim from Lekuchos. So the Gemora says, Malva, the Gemora asks, Malva Asvini Kolomis, you're asking a question from a loan onto a sale, right? They're not comparable. When a person borrows money, he borrows in private because he doesn't want people, right? He doesn't want people to discover that he is short of cash. And therefore, he hides it, deliberately hides it. And therefore, that's why you can't claim from subsequent buyers, because the subsequent buyers are not going to have any idea that you borrowed the money, right? Whereas when it comes to a sale, on the contrary, you sell in public so that people know about it. That's what you want. You want it to be publicized because you want people to come and buy it, right? And therefore, they should have heard about it. So in other words, all we've done is very simple, right? We've basically got three different scenarios which each play out in a different way. When it comes to chazaka, right? What is that noise? Is it just me, or is it like what? There's some sort of computer here or something. Sorry, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in there. Shouldn't be so. I shouldn't be so pedantic.
It's not irritating noise. It's very annoying.
Is it in there, Avi?
Singing tongues.
Okay. All right, let's carry on.
Follow the noise.
Maybe it's in the other room. It's in the soundproof room. Okay, let's carry on. Don't worry about it.
Sometimes when people sell their own banks, because there's more of a Spartish thing, like selling properties regardless of this or something, fitting for a day. So you might try and do a discreet sale. That's also.
Well, you might do, but that's It's unusual. It's unusual because normally people sell it. Normally people announce it. If you want to sell something, you want people to come and buy it. Otherwise,
You want the best price, you need competition.
yeah, you need people to know about it. So the point is we're saying there's three different scenarios. There's a case of chazaka. That means to say when a person is machzik in land. The person is machzik in land. Don't worry about it. I feel better. Martin, don't worry about it. Oh, well, okay. Alexa. Ah, marvelous. Right. Okay. So, right. Now we've sorted that. Okay. So, the three cases. The case of chazaka, where we say there's no reason that a person should know about it, right? Person should know. You're doing investigative work, and therefore, if they only sold the land to each other just with Adim, that's not good enough. That's not good enough, and therefore that's a fault in the chazaka. And therefore, because no way he would have known about it, so he would have just assumed, well, you're just not being normal. You're just not using the land normally, and that's why I didn't make a machor, right? Second case is the case of a loan. With a loan, we're saying that people, generally speaking, lend privately, and therefore, because they lend privately, they don't want to know you're short of cash. As a result, the subsequent buyers don't hear about it. And therefore, if it's only Adim, not a star, they're not going to know about it. And as a result, you can't claim from them. Okay. And then the final case was the case of a sale, where there's a sale. It's the other way around, because there we expect the subsequent buyers, to have done their due diligence. If they didn't do it, that's their problem. It's their problem. And therefore, even if the sale only took place in front of Adim and there was no star involved, okay, he's allowed to claim from encumbered property. If he bought the land, he's allowed to claim from encumbered property. With me? Okay. Probably was bought subsequently. Toner Rabbanon, the Brisa says, if the father consumed the land for 1 year. So this is a scenario where there's a guy who buys property, right? There's a guy who buys property from someone else, and then he works the land for a year, but v'haben shtayim, and then he gives it in front of his son for 2 years subsequent to that, because he dies. Okay, so the question is, can you form a chazaka if it's two different people? If it's two different people, like a father and son, he dies. So the son is that good enough for a chazaka? Or the other way around. The father used property for 2 years, the son used it for 1 year. A third scenario is the father used it for 1 year, the son used it for another year, and then the son sold it to Reuven, and he used it for the 3rd year. So all these cases are Rezu Chazaka. Yeah, in all these cases are Rezu Chazaka. The Brisa says that's a good Chazaka. You can join them up together. Now, the case we're really focused on is the last one. Okay? Now, in other words, the first 2 cases of the 3 are not such a chiddush. Because as Rashbam explains, we say the Yerush is Kari Davua, the inheritance is like the extension of the father, literally the leg of the father. Like the continuity of the thing, and therefore the person who is ma'arer can't say, "Oh, well, you weren't in it for 3 years, therefore I didn't object." Everyone knows that if the father dies, the son gets it. Like you didn't know about the Levi. Of course, you knew about the Levi, and if you knew the son inherited it, like it's a very weak claim to start saying, "Oh, I didn't realize, I didn't know." Well, you didn't use it for 3 years. That's not normal. Of course, it's normal. It's normal if the father dies, God forbid, then the son gets it, right? You understand? That's normal. The interesting case, though, is the 3rd one, where we can join together the lokeach, the buyer, right? Says the Gemora, le meimra de lokeach isle kala. The principle, the key point, is that a buyer is people know about. People know about someone who buys it, and Rashbam takes on that he says it's obvious that we're dealing with a case where there's a shtar. So we're not going back into the Edim and shtar question that we dealt with previously. We're assuming it was a normal sale with a document. It was a documented shtar sale. That's not up for debate, okay? But we're assuming that alone is enough to produce that people know about it, and therefore you can form a chazaka.
It is a shtar sale.
Yeah.
The shtar's been lost.
No, not that shtar. The first shtar has been lost.
Yeah. It's the 3rd
The original shtar, the shtar that the father. Remember, father, son, buyer. So the father's shtar has been lost after 3 years. I think we mentioned that also in the previous Gemora. Or if not, then we'll mention it somewhere here. The second 2 shtaras, of course, have to still be in existence, because if they're not, then it's completely reasonable. Well, at least when there's 3 buyers, we said that. When there's 3 buyers, and obviously the second 2 shtaras need to be in existence. Otherwise, that's a real fault. That's a real fault. Pardon?
I guess the son would inherit, so it wouldn't be a shtar.
Yeah, exactly. There ain't be a shtar. Exactly. Yeah, it wouldn't be a shtar when he inherits. Exactly. No, not normally. Yeah.
Sorry, just to answer your question. What's the connection between the guy that Reuven sold, the father, the son, and Reuven?
Yeah.
What's the connection between Reuven and the son?
Nothing. Nothing. We just created another case. There's no connection. We it's just that
the 3rd year of Reuven constitutes a.
Yes, that's what we're saying.
I don't get that.
Why?
Because
Reuven, no, because what happens is that you have a man. Let's make it simple. Okay, Reuven owns a piece of property, and everyone agrees. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows he owns property. It's always been his, right? According to the argument presented by Shimon, we're going to call now the buyer Shimon just to be confusing. So Shimon, who's got it now, the land, he says this is the story. This piece of land that you used to own, right? There was a man called whatever, more names, Levi. He bought it from you. He died after the 1st year. His son,
inheritance.
what? Yehuda. Yeah, although Yehuda's not Levi's son. Okay, whatever. Yeah, Yehuda inherited it. Yeah, I'm wrong. Yitzhak, Kas ben Levi, right? So yeah, he got it after him for the next year, and then he sold it to me for year 3. That's the argument that Shimon presents to Reuven. So he wants to say, "There's a chazak. I've got a chazak. I've got 3 years." So Reuven says, Yeah. So he said, I've got this 3 years chazaka. And Reuven says, what are you talking about? You didn't use it normally. You know, the reason why I didn't make an objection was because there wasn't one guy living in the land for 3 years. That's why I didn't object. Remember, chazaka is only formed because you should have objected. We said I didn't object because you weren't normal. It wasn't normal. So the argument is that you knew that it was normal behavior because there was a star, right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like I said, the first 2 cases are not such a chiddush because the father died. It's obvious that he should be able to say that that this you can still form a chazaka.
Sorry, I'm really sorry to say, but
No, it's not. It is confusing. But go on.
Reuven is year 3.
Well, I changed the names now.
Chap number 3, who was not related.
There are 4 people here.
Yeah, the 4 right.
It's easy to call them all names. Okay, it's easier, right? Reuven owns a piece of land. He sells it to Shimon. Let's call him Shimon now. Reuven sells it to Shimon. Okay, Shimon has it. Who's the dad? Shimon has it for a year, then he dies. Okay, so then his son inherits, who's Levi. So his Levi has it for another year, right? And then Levi sells it to Yehuda, person number 4. Now the argument now is between Yehuda and Reuven. And Yehuda comes along and says, it's my land. Reuven says, where's your star? Well, he said, why should I have a star? 3 years. No one keeps a star more than 3 years. Yeah?
Yeah.
No, that's it, right? Okay, that's it. That's it. Chazaka is 3 years, right? Now Reuven comes along and says, what are you talking about? You know, I didn't object within the 3 years because it wasn't, there were 3 different people in the land. But Yehuda says, what do you mean there are 3 different people in the land? It was public knowledge. I bought it with a star, and everyone knows that a son inherits the father. So it's all been above board, and it's all been public knowledge, and therefore you should have objected. And that's what the Gemora infers. You see that lokeach is leikola, that everyone knows about a buyer. People know about it, right? People know about it. It's public knowledge.
So what's the question exactly?
No, wow, very good. So now the Gemara says, why is that problematic? Or a mini, because we have a brisa, which implies that this is not the case. Now, the brisa is the reverse case, where you've got one person in the land for 3 years. The land has not changed hands at all, okay? But there's a different individual who is claiming the ownership. You switch the borders on the other foot, right? There's one guy who's in the land for 3 years, but the person has changed. The person, the individual who is claiming that the land is not yours, but it's mine, that's changed hands. Look, Ochlo b'fnei av shona, he consumed the land, that means he used the property in front of the father for 1 year, or b'fnei ben shtayim, and in front of the son for 2 years. So there was, in other words, he bought it from Reuven. Reuven died after a year, and then Shimon was the next 2 years. Do you understand the scenario?
Only 2 years.
He didn't know. Well, he didn't own it.
Adverse possession.
He's claiming like this. There's one person called Reuven, and he is in the land, and he is in the land, squats in the land for 3 years. Okay. But during those 3 years, the persona of the person who's now claiming ownership has changed. So obviously the original owner, quote unquote. So obviously Reuven is not here now, so he's not the one in court. Yes, who's coming to Beis Din? Reuven's son. Reuven's son is coming along to Beis Din and saying, "Hey, I know I'm Shimon, and it was my father who used to own the land. But he died after a year, and now I'm the son, and I'm claiming that you don't have chazaka. What's my claim? What do you mean 3 years? You should have objected."
He didn't have possession of the land for these 3 years.
Well, he did. No, he did.
His father had it. He wasn't involved.
He got him machar when his father's alive.
Again, who had possession for 3 years?
Combination of two. It was a combination of two.
No, not the person squatting.
The person squatting.
The person squatting the land was the same person
Yeah, for all 3 years.
for all 3 years.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Whatever.
William.
What?
Yeah.
William.
We're going to use the royal family.
Yeah. Do you understand? He is the same person is in the land for 3 years.
Yeah.
But those 3 years, there wasn't the same person he was facing in terms of the person who's claiming to be the owner. Because it's ochla b'fnei av shona. He ate it, he used the land 1 year in front of the father, b'fnei ben shtayim, and 1 year in front of, and 2 years in front of the son, or b'fnei ha'av shtayim b'fnei ha'ben shona, or 2 years in front of the father and 1 year in front of the son, or again the third case, b'fnei ha'av shona, 1 year in front of the father, b'fnei ha'ben shona, 1 year in front of the son, or b'fnei lokeach shona, and 1 year in front of the buyer, because the original owner, the original person he bought it from, died after 1 year, so his son had it the second year, and at the end of year 2, the son sold the land that he's squatting in to a third person.
So then how do you formulate a position of Hazaka?
Well, it's very simple.
A legal squatter then sells to a third party.
No, the legal squatter didn't sell anything. There's the same man squatting now, same person squatting. But who is he debating with? Who is he arguing with? He's not arguing with Reuven because Reuven's dead, right? So he's either arguing with Reuven's son Shimon, or in the third scenario, he's arguing with the buyer, who's Levi.
I said, hang on, I bought it.
Exactly. He says, I bought it. And the guy, and Reuven says, what do you mean? I've been here for 3 years. William says, I've been here for 3 years. I've been squatting down for 3 years. You've got no star. Who keeps a star after 3 years? So obviously the counterclaim is going to be what? What's the counterclaim going to be? How could I object? I've only had it for 1 year. I've only been here for 1 year.
Hello, no, what's his time?
What's his taina? Whose taina?
What's Mr. Squatter's time?
I bought it from Reuven. I bought it from Reuven 3 years ago. I don't care. I don't care what's happening in the meantime. Think about it. You buy a house, right? And after 3 years, after 25 years, yeah, there's a line of people lining up outside your door, ringing your doorbell saying, hey, but we bought it to him. What do you mean? I bought it 25 years ago from him. I don't care what happened afterwards. It wasn't yours to sell. I bought it. What? Yeah, exactly. Where have you been all these years? Where have you been all these 3 years?
No one's done that.
The case of the buyer, there's a buyer in the third case. He's not checked, he's not asked any questions.
No, so 1 second. So one second. So this is 1 second. Look at the Gemara's question.
Yeah.
The Brisa says in all these cases, Harezu Chazaka. You can establish Chazaka because you can turn around and say, I don't care what happened, or I don't care what happened. You didn't do anything. No one objected. Your father didn't object. You didn't object. You, the buyer, didn't object. No one did anything, right? And therefore, as a result, it's my land. Says the Gemara. Now the Gemara asks the question: if you're going to say that everyone knows about a purchase with a document, that's the best macha you can do. The best possible objection you can do, right, is instead of waving a placard and objecting and saying, "Hey, it's my land," you actually go and sell it to someone else. It's brilliant. The squatter is in your land, right? You've got a house in Manchester and you live in London, okay? And the guy's in your land. So after 2 years, you go and sell it to someone. You sell the house in Manchester. You're not there. You don't turn up on the door, but you sell the house in Manchester. If everyone knows about it, the guy can't claim I didn't know about it. If we're going to say that everyone knows about sales, and therefore this is a contradiction, because the only way to understand why it should be a chazaka is because we say that people don't know about sales. People don't know about people buying things.
Just one question. When he sold it to the father,
Yeah.
why was the father still on? No, hang on. When he sold it to the father,
He didn't sell it to the father.
the father gave it to
He bought it from the father.
from the okay, that's the beginning of answer.
Yeah. He bought it from the father.
Who's he?
We can give him a name if you want.
William. Yeah.
Don't call it William.
William bought it from Reuven.
William bought it from Reuven.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Reuven's the father.
Reuven's the father.
And then the father dies after a year. So who gets it? Shimon, his son. Okay? And then Shimon sells it to Levi.
So why didn't William bought it from the father? Why didn't William move on to the land?
He did.
Then how did the land go to the son?
What do you mean?
William didn't buy it. He's squatting.
He's just squatting in it.
Thank you.
Fine.
That's it. That was a bit.
Well, he didn't buy. He claims to have bought it.
Yeah.
He claims to have
Fine.
bought it. Yeah, he claims to have bought it. Yeah. Yeah, in other words, that's the same as all the other, as everything we've said so far. Yeah. What's the answer? Amar Papa, Kitanya hi b'moicher sodosov stam. The Gemara says it's not comparable. In reality, of course it's the case. Of course it's the case that people know about sales. And that's what the first brisa means, which is why the third person, the third buyer, Harezu chazaka. If you sell it to a third person, it's a chazaka because everyone knows about a sale and the guy should have objected. And absolutely, people know if you sell something with a document, with a shtar, everyone knows about it, right? So why is it that in the second case, the second brisa, we say that if the original owner sells it to someone else, that is not a valid mechor objection? Because the facts of that case were that he just sold all his property, a portfolio of property. He sold the whole portfolio. That's what it means mechosodos of some. He sold all his property. So this guy is a property magnate, and he owns land in Aberdeen and in Inverness and in Glasgow and in Manchester. There's a little house in Manchester, and he doesn't specify the house in Manchester. He just sells everything, right? And as a result, there's no coil, there's no sound, there's no noise, there's no knowledge about that particular sale. And that's why he doesn't know about it. That's the case.
Bulk sale.
Correct. Let's see the Rashbam. It's the first wide line. Ochla ha'av shona, if the father consumed the property for a year, umeis, and then he dies, va'ochla b'noi acharov, and then his son uses it after him, shtayim, for 2 years, v'lo micha hama'arer, and the person who is objecting didn't make an objection. He's objecting now, but he didn't objection then. Harezu chazaka, that's a chazaka shemetztarfin l'shalosh shonim. They can join together to make up 3 years. The Yorish carried avohu, because we say that an inheritor is the leg of his father. He's a continuity of his father. V'lo motzi ma'ara lemita, and the ma'ara cannot claim mishum d'lo achzik kol echad shalosh shonim lo mochisi, because each one didn't have it for 3 years. That's why lo mochisi didn't object. Remember, these are the simpler cases, right? Everyone knows that the son gets it from the father. That's not a valid claim. You can't say, well, I didn't object because you didn't have it for 3 years. Everyone knows the son takes over the father. But the third case was the son sold it to the buyer with a shtar. Lememar, says the Gemora, are you trying to tell me that this implies someone who buys from someone who's inherited, Islay Kola, everyone knows about it. Or we ask a question from the Brisa. The Gemora didn't ask this question earlier on Rav. The Rashbam takes us on a side track now a little bit. The Rashbam has a problem, and the Rashbam's question is, why didn't we ask the question on Rav above? Because Rav, you see, this should be a question on Rav, this Brisa. What does the Brisa say? The one we just said. What does it say? That everyone knows about person who buys. Okay. The second Brisa should be a question on Rav. The second Brisa is what? The second Brisa says that selling it to someone else does not produce a coil, does not produce a noise. Okay.
Because it was in the portfolio.
No, that's already the answer. Forget that. The Gemara is saying, why don't we ask? Rav's from is saying, why don't we ask the question on Rav? Rav made a statement before. Well, yeah. Rav said clearly that if you sell something with a shtar, everyone knows about it. Well, this Brisa says you don't know about it. Before you get to the answer. Yeah. So the answer is you could have asked the question. We didn't ask a question on Rav from this very Brisa, the Rav belokech melokech Mairi, because Rav was talking about a buyer from a buyer. That was his scenario.
Two prices.
Yeah, they're both prices. That's why I asked a question on Rav from a case that is comparable to the scenario that Rav was talking about. Okay, right? That's why we ask a question on him from a case where it was a buyer. It was a buyer from a buyer, right? All scenarios that are comparable to that,
As opposed to a buyer.
as opposed to someone who buys from an inheritor, which is just it's a different setup. Basically, we could have asked from him, but it's a different setup, and that's why the Gemara prefers not to ask the question from there. So the Gemara now says, Rashban carries on. That was a bit of a side point. Islay Kola. We're saying because the suggestion is that a buyer everyone knows about. And the Ma'ara should have objected because he didn't object. That's why it's a chazaka, right? That's what we're saying. Okay, that's the whole point. The point is everyone knows about it, so the objector should have said something. He didn't do that, and therefore it's a chazaka. We have another brisa which implies the opposite. If the machzik, the person in the land, consumed the property in front of the father, it belonged to him for a year. right? He says he bought it from the father. Okay, that means to say the person he bought it from, who we are calling the father, okay, he was still alive for a year, right? Following the sale. Make sense? He was still alive. The person he bought it from was still alive for a year. Okay. But for now, Ben, and then the second year, the son was alive. After the father's death. And in front of the buyer who bought it from the son. And again, the Rashba emphasizes he has a star. That's not debatable in this whole Gemora, this piece of the Gemora. There's a star and everything else. That's not the question. So we say you can form a chazaka over the 3 years. And the buyer from the son is not able to take it away from the hand of the squatter. That means the person, the third person, the buyer, and we've got father, son, buyer. Obviously, the buyer is the one who is now, getting very hot under the collar. He spent his money on this land, his house in Manchester. He spent his money on it, and he's coming to go. I'm taking you to court. It's my land. I bought it, right? And we say he's not allowed to do that. He can't get it. He can't get away from the squatter because the machzik, the squatter, claims I had a document of sale from the father, the person who had it in the first year. I was very careful. I locked it up in a safe for 3 years. I did everything I was supposed to do. Yerushalayim explains this very beautifully. And now, it was lost now. You with me? I didn't bother looking after it after I squatted in the land for 3 years without anyone saying anything, without any objections. I didn't know anything about you buying it from the son after 2 years. Because someone who buys from a son, there's no noise. No one knows about that. But that wasn't an objection. The fact that the son sold it to you, I don't know about that. No one knows about sales. Because again, that's our question, right? Remember, that's our question. You understand what's going on here? There are two people who stand in court. The people who stand in court are the buyer. Yes, you have Reuven, who is the father. You have Shimon, who is the son. And you have Levi, who is the buyer from Shimon. And he obviously has paid good money for this house. So he takes the squatter, we'll call him Yehuda, to court and says, Yehuda, thank you very much. I bought this fair and square. And Yehuda said, what do you mean? I had a document that showed clearly that I bought it from Reuven. And Levi says, who's Reuven? He says, what do you mean? Reuven is the father of the man you bought it from. Right? The father of the man you bought it from. So Levi says, what do you mean? Where's your star now? So Yehuda says, what do you mean? It's been 3 years. No one keeps documents more than 3 years. I shredded it. So I decluttered everything after 3 years. and as a result, who gets the land? What? Who's that? Yeah, okay. And who is that, right? And that's it, right? That's it. And as a result, the point is that we see from here clearly that the fact that and the Gemara says that Yehuda is successful in his claim, right? He's successful and he keeps the land, the squatter, right? So what do you see? You see that selling land is not public knowledge. People don't know about it, and that doesn't constitute a machar. Because if it did, why not?
But why not?
Oh, well, let's see the next Rashbam. Ein l'cha machar gedola mizu. This is part of the question. What do you mean? If you're going to say everyone knows about sales, then there's no greater machar than selling it to someone else. Than Shimon selling it to someone else. Shemachra ben asov shtei shonim l'lekeach zeh. That the son sold it at the end of 2 years to this buyer. And the machzik, the person who squats, should have been careful in this star all of the days, until he's able to disprove the document of this buyer. Remember, if he produces his document, as soon as Yehuda pulls out his star, right, then Levi, he's game over for Levi. Yeah, because he's finished, right? Because his document predates Levi's. If I bought it from Ruvain, then obviously Shimon could never sell it to Levi, Shimon the son, because you never got to Shimon, right? I bought it from Ruvain. So all he needs is the shah. So as soon as you know there's a problem on this land, as soon as you know that someone's out to get you, then you must keep hold of your paperwork. You do not shred it. Well, that's an interesting question. Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. Even if you know Ruvain's died, so what?
Because there's a very real possibility that the inheritance is going to sell.
All right, okay, but that alone is not a problem. That's not my problem. I don't have to worry about that.
I'm saying if you're holding on to a document, you've got it for a year. You've held it for a year.
And then Ruvain died. Okay, and then you. Okay, even so, that's not a reason for me not to shred my document. The only reason for me not to shred my document, to put it another way, the only case where the fact that I shredded my document counts against me is if I had a reason to hold on to it because I knew there was someone down the line who was, champing at the bit to get hold of this property. Okay, and that would only occur if, let's say, there'd been a sale to someone else, according to what we're saying now, right? Whether that's, or someone stood up and waved his placards and said, "This is my land." 3 years after the document is not enough. You see, once someone has made a mechor, again, if we were saying that everyone knows about a sale, once someone has made a sale, once someone has made an objection, just keeping it for 3 years after the document has appeared, after another document has appeared, that's not going to help. We'll take it away from the squatter if he wasn't careful with his document, because I've been picking as we said earlier on. We said this stuff in 6 years. There's no greater objection than this. This is the case where I think he sold it to someone else. One second, what was it? Yeah, it was right at the top of that page of the Ramadan. Basically, we said, someone says, "Why are you doing it in my land?" He said, I bought it from someone else, and I used it for 3 years, 3 years chazaka. And he says, I have got a star that I bought it from him 4 years previously. That's when I bought it. So he says, I didn't mean 3 years. A long time ago. I bought it a long time ago. And he said that's only when he's used it for 7 years, where he's got the chazaka, the chazaka preceded the star of this individual. But if it was only 6 years, that means to say, the scenario there was, someone comes along and says, I bought it from so-and-so. And the next person comes along and says, right, I've got a star that I purchased the land 4 years before you. Now, the only way he can disprove him, says the Gemora, is if he's got a document, if we can interpret his words, that he bought it 7 years ago. So that he had 3 years chazaka before the star. But if, let's say, he's got only 6 years, that means to say, you've got, he definitely bought it first, but he only had a chazaka. Remember, he's got no star now. There's no star now, but the stars have all gone. There's no star now. There's no star now at all, right? So we're just relying on chazaka. So you have to have had 3 years chazaka before the other guy came on the scene. The other guy's claim that he had what he's got a star. Sorry, he's got a star that he had it 4 years, that he bought it 4 years ago. So I realized I confused you. Reuven has some property, right? This was the Gemara there. Reuven has some property, right? Reuven has a piece of land. Reuven sold that land to someone. We don't know who. Shimon says, I bought the land X number of years ago. Comes along Levi and says, right, I've got a document, and he pulls out a star that shows that he bought the land 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Now, the only way that Shimon can beat Levi, okay, is if he was squatting in the land for 7 years before this point in time. Because he needs to establish 3 full years chazaka before the date on the star that person number 2 has produced. Okay?
We established it by Adis that he was there for 7
Yeah, exactly. He brings Adim that he was squatting in this land for 7 years. Okay? He doesn't have any documents, remember. Shimon has no documents. Levi has a document. But if Shimon can prove that he was squatting in that land for 7 years, that means he had 3 clear years chazaka before Shimon came on the scene. Therefore, his document is irrelevant. His shtar is irrelevant. But Shis, if it's only 6 years, Ein L'cha Machal Gedolim Mizu, the Gemora says. If it's only 6 years, there's no greater objection than what? Than the fact that the other guy has a shtar up 2 years into your squatting. 2 years into your squatting.
because it's only 6.
Remember, he claimed 4 years.
Right.
4 years. There's 4 and 2. Basically, you were squatted for 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, you saw someone else bought it. Okay, someone else bought it, and the Rashbam here is just bringing this Gemara to emphasize the fact that it doesn't matter how many years you exist in land, you squat in land after a shtar, you can never disprove that shtar unless you have a document. That's what you see from that Gemara over there. The only way, you've got 2 people, one of them has a shtar and one does not. The only way the one who does not have a shtar can get that land is if he can bring Adim that he squatted in the land for 3 years before the date on the guy with the shtar. So that means, 1 second, so that means that in our case, right, if we are going, because this was still in the question, if we're going Ein L'cha Machal Gedolim Mizu, right, that there's no greater objection than the production of a shtar, okay, there is no other eitzah for the buyer, not for the buyer, sorry, for the person who's claiming the squatting rights, yeah, except to produce a shtar, and he'll have to have that shtar forever. He will never ever be able to use chazaka. I go to him, why not? 3 years.
Well, if you can't use it in 3 years, I mean, if you can't use when in this situation,
No, you're saying it's like more.
you mean he'll never
What I'm saying is this, is that once a person has a shtar, okay,
second.
once a person has a shtar against you, remember, because that's really what we've got now, don't we? We've got the person who's claiming, who's got a shtar, that he bought it from the sun, and I've got someone else who's squatting in the land. So you might think, okay. Well, no. Again, we're going in the question. It's confusing. We're assuming a shtar does win. That's what we're going with now. We're going with the shtar does win, right? So if we go with the fact that the shtar wins, to put the Rasham another way, is there any way a squatter can get it? If a shtar wins, is there any way a squatter could get it? So you might think logically, yes.
3 years.
3 years. If he's there for 3 years after the date of the shtar. What's the fault with that?
Before the start.
Exactly. Yeah, before. That's the point. We see from the Gemara earlier on that you would have to, which he doesn't have here, obviously. He obviously doesn't have that here, does he? Think about it. He's only got 2 years. He bought it from the father. The father died, and then the son had it for a year. And then you've got a shtar, which is dated to the beginning of year 3. So you don't have 3 years. And you see from the Gemara earlier on that therefore you will never beat a shtar. It doesn't matter how many years. You could be squatting in it for 15 years afterwards. You are always expected to hold on to your documents, yes, if there is a shtar flying around. And if that shtar appeared less than 3 years after your purported squatting commencement, then you cannot get that land unless you can produce a shtar. This is effectively what's happened here. When did he start squatting in the land? At the beginning of year 1. Yes? At the end of year 2, beginning of year 3, there's a clear piece of paper which says that the land was sold to someone else. So now he's messed up. He's ruined. He hasn't got 3 years before. If he had 3 squatting years before, that was the Gemara earlier on, then he's fine. Because he's had 3 years squatting before any shtar came on the scene. So forget the shtar, it's irrelevant, right? But he doesn't have that here. He's only got 2 years. So Rashbam tells us, B'shalosh shonim achar shtar ein dai. 3 years after the document is not going to help. We'll take it away from the squatter if he wasn't careful with his star. As we said in our parak above, if there were 6 years, there's no greater machor than that. And again, the case of 6 years was where you squatted for 2 years, and then at the beginning of year 3, someone, remember, which was 4 years, the last 4 years, someone has a document proving ownership. Have I completely lost you?
Isn't it a bit strange though that you just bought a piece of land and you haven't cleared the squatter out? Yeah, what's that?
They haven't cleared the squatter out.
But the first thing you do when you bought a property or a piece of land.
Yeah, well, okay, fine, but you know you've got time. You're relaxed. You're relaxed. Remember, Jeremy, you know the law,
2 years.
so you're relaxed. Who?
The guy's living there for 2 years.
So?
Yeah.
Where's this guy been? Who's bought the property? His question. Like,
No, but where's your dog? Where's your star? It's your word of mouth. You've got no proof.
No, there's
You've got no star. Remember, you're a squatter without a star. So who says? So you're just squatting.
Buying property, but there's someone there.
Yeah.
That's question A. And question B.
One second. There's someone there. Okay.
Absolute owner. We had the case someone's wealthy who's got different property.
Yeah, he might. Yeah, firstly, you might not know who's there and who's not there. Secondly, that's not the point. The point is that you say, I bought this property fair and square. You have no documentation to prove your ownership. And if you'd been there 3 years, that would be different because then you'd have chazaka, but you haven't got chazaka. So I win. The only way I can lose it, which is what we say that he does form a chazaka, the squatter wins, is because there is no ko. No one knows about the sale. And that contradicts what we said before. You don't like Alvi? Why don't you like it?
I don't know. Something doesn't feel comfortable.
Well, because you're not happy with the fact that this guy bought it when there was someone sitting in the land. But he doesn't care. Because when he's ready to evict him, he will. No, Jeremy, don't think so?
No, just go back to that point about you've got property everywhere. He wouldn't know about the sale.
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
The squat, anyone. You said if you're not hearing about the sale.
I don't think the squatter has property everywhere.
No, sorry. If you have the properties or whatever.
Oh, we're going to get to that now. No, but that's the answer. One second. At the moment, we haven't got to that. This idea of like selling like a whole load of property in one go. We'll see that, right? We'll see that. Again, it's just confusing, but it's got a bit of a sidetrack. The Rambam is pointing out something very simple to us. He's telling us that once you have someone who produces a star, and you have only been squatting in the land for less, and you've been squatting in the land for less than 2 years. There is no way you will ever be able to get that through however many years afterwards you squat there, because he's got a star against you. How can you beat a star? Only if you produce a star that predates it. In other words, nishab ishtaroi, because we say to you, you should have been careful about your star.
Not even no.
No.
That's what my question.
No, Adam, that what?
You've got 180. You say he saw the contract, went up in smoke.
No, I don't know.
Would that not defeat the second star?
Firstly, that's a different question. Secondly, meaning that's a different. We haven't really been suggesting. We haven't been suggesting. I think there were maybe other cases when there were Adam about the sale or something like that. That's not the case here. We don't have any Adam around at the moment. We have to take that as face value. What?
What was he squatting for 3 years?
That's okay. 3 beforehand, not 3 years afterwards. Not 3 years afterwards. 3 years beforehand.
So a star doesn't trump 3 years squatting.
If the 3 years squatting have preceded the star, then it's yours.
Then it's still the squatters.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Because I thought you were saying.
Yeah, no. Only if it comes first. Now, the Gemora answers the contradiction. The contradiction we had was, do we say, well, originally we said that no one knows about a sale. Here, that everyone knows about a sale. Here we're saying no one knows about a sale. And that's why the squatter keeps it, because he can say, well, you didn't object. And your sale was not a valid objection. I didn't know about it, right? Okay, that's why it's a chazaka. That's what we're saying. The Gemora says, you understand? Because that's where we are now. That's how the only reason you can understand why it does go to the squatter, even if the other guy does have a star. We're just flipping it on its head now, right? Because that's what the halacha we're saying is it's a chazaka. That it does go to the squatter, even though there was a sale to someone else. Why? Because people don't know about it. So the Gemara answers the case of popular the last Rashbam. In reality, I'll say to you, that a buyer everyone knows about. Why do we not consider it an objection? The buying of the buyer from the son, right? That third year, because the son was a big property magnate and he sold all his property without specifying. Without specifying, so all his property stam, all the property that belonged to his father. The and the buyer claims he claims that this field as well I acquired within amongst all the other lands. We say to him, we say to him, no, you made a mistake. You assumed, you the buyer from the son, assumed that you were buying all the land and the house in Manchester. No, we say to him, of course not. You bought all his field. You bought all that field, those fields up in the north of Scotland, but you never bought this house in Manchester, ever. Never bought that. He didn't specify. Okay, and that is where a sale is not public knowledge. Okay, because there's even a debate what was actually sold. But if he sold Zu Asoda, this field b'fnei atzmo alone, then the squatting of the machzik is nullified. Because then for sure there is no greater objection than this. If he sold it to someone else, that is a public objection. The fact that you went and sold it to someone else, clearly that means you're objecting to the squatter, right? And that's how it is. The Yesh Mefarshim says some explain he sold all his field, comes with more, and he sold explicitly this one with it as well. For Lav Milsi, the stam mashma shelo pirish. Rashbam doesn't like that because the word stam implies that he didn't specify, not that he did, not that he spelled it out. So those that he doesn't like, he does away with that explanation. I'm not sure exactly how those Yesh Mefarshim would explain the Gemora anyway, because the fact that he sold it explicitly, why would that make it worse or whatever? Anyway, so that's the resolution. You with me? Yeah, that's the resolution. We had a stira, had a contradiction. Are we saying that it's public knowledge about sales or not? The answer is, of course it is. Of course it is. If you sell something, everyone knows about it. You sell something with a star, everyone knows about it, and that would destroy a chazaka. Yeah, that would destroy a chazaka because you should have known about it, and therefore you should have kept your star. And if you didn't, you're ruined, right? Yeah. Or in the case before, where a person squats in the land and he buys the third year was a purchase. That's also a good chazaka because everyone knows about a sale, and therefore you should have objected. And if you didn't, that's your problem, right? And therefore I get to keep it. And the only case where it's not is where there wasn't specified which land, and therefore there was a debate even whether this land was even sold. There we are. And we said we'd start the Mishnah, so we better. Masnisin, the Mishnah says ha'umnin. Well, what can we do? Ha'umnin. Yeah, no, I know. It's a bit of a thing. Ha'umnin. It's a fascinating Mishnah, but we'll only just give you a hint to it now. Ha'umnin. Such an important Mishnah. The Mishnah deals with people who, by definition, can never establish a chazaka against each other. The first is a craftsman. Rashbam says we're not dealing with land now. We're dealing with a person who works for you. Let's say you want to get your suit dry cleaned, and you take your suit into the dry cleaners, and he says the next day delivery or next day service, and you knock on the door the next day and says it's mine. What do you mean? So you were laughing. It's true. Tell us, Bob Metzia, right? So you rock up at the next door at the cleaners. This is the scenario. Everyone talks about this. It's about a tailor or whatever. You look at it and say, it's mine. Prove it's yours. Yeah? So you can't do chazaka. Can't form chazaka. And similarly, a shutaf. Yeah? Because that's the deal. It's a partnership arrangement. You can't say, hey, it's mine. I've been there 3 years. That's land. I've been there 3 years. Well, what have you been there 3 years? 3 years yours, 3 years mine. That's the deal. We're partners, right? Similarly, a sharecropper. A sharecropper is an arrangement where a person works the land and let's say takes 50% of the crops or whatever. So again, there could have been a deal that you would take the crops for 5 years. You work the land for 5 years, you get the crops for 5 years, and then I get the crops for 5 years as the owner of the land. So all these things you can't form chazaka. And finally, the last case is, the first one, the Mishnah, is apotropsin. Apotropos is someone who's appointed, let's say, a guardian of ward of the court, whatever, to look after property of trusteeship, whatever. So again, that's the deal. You're a trustee. Don't overstep the boundaries. You don't own it. You can't claim that you now own it because you're a trustee. Okay? Normally that is the scenario with or a patropsin are normally orphans. It could be there'll be other scenarios as well, but that's the standard. That's the standard case. And then the Mishnah goes on to talk about husband and wife as well, because also very relevant. You can have property that's owned by either the husband or the wife. So again, they can't form chazak on each other. It's all very relevant. So in Mitzvah Hashem, we will continue this Mishnah next time. All right, well, we started it. Yeah, very good. Next week is normal. Yeah. Just last week was a problem. You want a video? You want saying you want to say guys? Okay.